Hi everyone, this is Joel Curtis with your Alaska Weather TV show. Starting out for hazardous weather. All of the warnings, watches, and advisories today are in the Fairbanks Forecast Office area of responsibility. We have winter storm warnings for most of the West Coast, which includes Point Hope all the way down to Cape Romanzoff. That would be for snow, blowing snow, 4 to 6 inches accumulation. Maybe some freezing rain in there and gusts to 55 miles per hour and some drifts. We have a winter weather advisory right in the middle there for the Seward Peninsula inland. Gusts to 40, 1 to 3 inches, and we also have a winter storm watch from Point Wainwright to Cape Lisburne. Snow, blowing snow, gusts to 40, and that will be on Thursday. And then we have a wind advisory along the eastern Alaska Range, 35, gusts to 50 miles per hour, and that will be both on Thursday and Friday. So here's for our satellite loop. You can see that weather system moving up toward the Pribilofs there. Quite a few cloud bands, including an old frontal system that's now just off the southwest coast. Also, we have some cloud bands over all the way from Fairbanks down to about Ketchikan or so. And also some over the northwest coast associated with some weak remnants of a warm front moving up in there. So for today's weather, we have that weak warm front, and that's moving over the central interior. That front is falling to pieces, as well as a weather system out in the Bering Sea, 970 millibars, with a front wrapped around it, and the cold part of the front is moving up to the Cold Bay area. We also have an old low pressure system off of Kodiak, 1012, and all of the fronts are dissipating and should be done by tonight, which forms a trough in the Gulf of Alaska. We've got some rain on the outer coast and over the water. And then as you get, of course, higher elevations, a little bit of light snow. Meantime, that system in the Bering Sea has now moved up to St. Matthew Island, 978 millibars. The front is not very well established, but there is a pump of warm air coming up from the south from about the Kodiak-Sitkinak Island area on up all the way up into Kotzebue Sound and up by Point Hope. And so there's some blowing snow in there and some heavy snow at times, which is causing those winter weather warnings and advisories. Also some mixed rain and snow to the southwest and another system south of the Aleutians, 973 millibars. On Thursday's weather, we have a 985 millibar low that it's up over in the Gulf of Anadyr. That's the system that was causing so much southerly flow. And the southerly flow is still over the central interior or so, although quite less precipitation, and there is warmer air in that, which I've indicated with a warm front there. Also, we have a trough south of Kodiak Island and a stream of moisture coming up from the south that's hitting southern Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, and on up into the Cook Inlet area and southwest a little bit. And then the 980 millibar low that's south of Amchitka or so, and there is some precipitation and wind associated with that one, and not much going on in southeast. And then for Friday's weather, that system again has ramped up a bit to 998 millibars. It's now over near the Pribilofs. Some mixed rain and snow in the center of it. Some snow showers behind the cold front that's indicated to the south of Kodiak there. And some warm air coming up into the Gulf with moderate rain behind the warm front. Some light rain right along the coast and some mixed precipitation. And then as you get into higher elevation, snow and snow showers. And up on the north slope, we have the remnants of an old trough that's causing some light snow, and then snow showers to the west of the system in the Bering Sea. So our low temperatures Thursday mornings, quite a bit of cooling there in southeast with mid-20s to mid-30s. And then out over the water, 38 degrees, Middleton Island, 35 at Kodiak. On up to Gulkana, +4, and then in the mid-20s or so for South Central. For Thursday morning, up on the north slope, minus single digits, and then as you get to the Brooks Range, a little bit of positive temperatures. 11 with some downslope wind in the central region. Also, as you get further south and you get to the Alaska Range, you'll notice 22 degrees for the Alaska Range with the downslope wind and the wind advisory there. And as we get down to Norton Sound or so, temperatures in the teens. Our low temperatures Thursday morning for southwest, as you go on out the chain, 30s, and then drops off into the 20s as you get down by Adak. 30 for the Pribilofs and 30 for Shimya, and a whopping +2 degrees for St. Lawrence Island. Southwest in southwestern Alaska, a lot of 20 readings, and as you get further north into the teens. The high temperatures Thursday afternoon for southeast Alaska, we got temperatures in the mid-30s and lower 40s. That stays true coming around all the way into south central. 17 for Gulkana, 29 for McGrath, and then down by Lake Iliamna up to 43 degrees. And then the high temperatures for the north, again, minus single digits along the north slope. As you get down where that warm air has been moving up, you can see temperatures in the mid-20s around Kotzebue Sound or so. But as you go further east along the Brooks Range, all the way down to -1. And then even further south, you'll even see some temperatures above freezing, and St. Lawrence gets up to 26. So the high temperatures Thursday afternoon for the southwest. Look at those temperatures above freezing. 33 ranging up to 40, 43. Out at the Pribilofs, 35. Shimya, 34. Adak, about 36 or so. And then along the Alaska Peninsula in the 40s. Low temperatures Friday morning for southeast. Dropping off, getting really cold into the 20s. And reaching to 30 down at Prince of Wales Island or so. Middleton Island, 39 degrees, Kodiak 38. As you get up into south central, you see the temperatures dropping off, becoming below freezing as you get up toward Talkeetna. 8 degrees at Gulkana, 25 at McGrath, and then as you get down, you start to see 30s and 40s again as you go southwest. Similarly, low temperatures for Friday morning, negative single digits along the north slope again. Those warm areas still stay pretty warm, temperatures in the teens and 20s in the west. But as you get further east, you can still see those minus single digits, especially for Yukon -4. Also down by Fairbanks, +13. And then where you have some downslope winds all the way up to 32. St. Lawrence Island getting up to 12. And the low temperatures Friday morning for the southwest. A lot of temperatures above, just above freezing or so for the southwest. Up into south central, again above freezing. Down by Kodiak, 38. And as you go out the Aleutian chain there, you've got temperatures in the 30s, down to 20 out at Shimya and 29 in the Pribilofs. High temperatures Friday afternoon, we'll see temperatures in the mid-30s and even into the mid-40s for southeast Alaska. 43 over at Kodiak, 20 up at Gulkana. Temperatures in the mid-30s and lower 40s for south central, and even crossing over the inlet and getting over to the southwestern Alaska, also temperatures in the 40s. Our high temperatures Friday afternoon for the north slope. We've got above zero, single digits, and up in the teens as you get along the Chukchi Sea coast, 26 at Kotzebue, and then as you go down the Seward Peninsula, mid-20s, and then as you get further down to Norton Sound, temperatures slightly above freezing at Unalakleet. Also, we have in the central interior 19 for Fairbanks and 25s along the Alaska Range where that downslope wind continues. And then for high temperatures Friday afternoon, we've got in the southwest temperatures in the 40s and dropping off to 32 near Nunivak Island, 34 for the Pribilos, 33 for Shemya, 36 for Adak, and then as you go up the peninsula, temperatures in the upper 30s and lower 40s. Well, that's our public segment today. Just recapping a couple of winter storm warnings we've got along a lot of the west coast, and then winter weather advisories and a wind advisory in the eastern Alaska Range. Thanks for tuning in.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, and now for our aviation forecast. Starting out Thursday morning, real mixed bag of flying conditions between IFR, marginal VFR, and some good VFR as you go further inland. Most of the IFR conditions are focused on the Aleutians, the Alaska Peninsula, the Southwest Alaska, and then on up through the Kotzebue Bay area and in a little bit into the North Slope, also from Prince William Sound. Then on Friday morning, the IFR actually increases much along the west coast due to the weather systems moving in there. Also the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, Lower Cook Inlet, and Prince William Sound. And then also we have a swath of IFR extending from Kotzebue Sound over the Brooks Range. On Friday afternoon, we have, again, areas of scattered IFR mixed in with marginal VFR and some VFR as you get further inland. Most of the IFR is along the coast, including Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, Southwest Alaska, all along the west coast, all the way right up to the North Slope, and of course the Brooks Range. On Thursday, our past conditions: Anaktuvik IFR, Adigan IFR, Lake Clark and Merrill, both IFR, Rainy Pass IFR, Windy Pass, marginal VFR, and expect some low-level turbulence. Isabel Pass IFR, Mentasta Pass VFR, Tanita Pass, marginal VFR, Portage IFR, Chilkoot and White, starting out as IFR and improving to marginal VFR during the day. For our freezing levels on Thursday morning, over the surface for much of the state, but as you can see, Southwest Alaska is getting a little bit of warming from all that southerly flow around the major weather system. Up to 2,000 feet over the Alaska Peninsula, and 4,000 foot contour also touches the Alaska Peninsula and just south of Kodiak. For our icing on Thursday, we have a fairly large area of considerable moderate icing between 3,000 and 8,000 feet due to the weather system that's approaching that area. That's all the way from Kodiak Island up to Kotzebue Sound and including St. Lawrence Island and most of the southwest. Also over the Bering Sea, we've got below 3,000 feet for isolated moderate, and then as you get further south of Kodiak, below 8,000 feet. Our jet stream on Thursday, most of the main jet as it remains well below the state and south of the Gulf of Alaska. However, we do have some 75 down to 65 knots over the Alaska Peninsula, 70 knots over the southwest, 75 knots over Norton Sound, and it drops off to 35 knots in the middle of the upper ridge over the central portion of the state and becoming even calm down by the Gulf. Then the northerlies really kick in, starting out at 80 over the Yukon Territory and dropping off to 60 as you get across southeast Alaska. For our 9,000 foot winds, we've got a very nice low-level jet, 65 knots through the Bering Strait across St. Lawrence Island and up to Point Hope. Also, we have drops off to 35 knots as you get over the Brooks Range. However, over Denali area, up to 55 knots out of the southwest, 45 knots over southwestern Alaska, 50 knots over the Alaska Peninsula, and then we do have a band of 60 knots south of Unalaska Island, 45 knots out in the Gulf. Our 3,000 foot winds on Thursday, We've got a whopping 55 knots going through the Bering Strait. However, it drops off to 40 as you get further east. Some 55 knots north of Lake Iliamna there, 45 knots down through Lower Cook Inlet, 25 knots out over the Alaskan Peninsula, and 50 knots as you get out in the Aleutians. 30 knots, a little picking up out of the northerlies for off the coast of southeast Alaska. And our turbulence. We're expecting a large swath of considerable moderate turbulence below 12,000 feet in the Denali region, below 4,000 feet as you get north for the Seward Peninsula and over near Point Hope, below 3,000 feet over St. Lawrence Island, below 6,000 feet for Lake Iliamna area and Kodiak Island with some isolated severe in there, and then below 3,000 feet out in the Aleutians. Well, that's it for aviation weather.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
The Space Weather Prediction Center has had a long-standing relationship with the power industry, so they've been aware that solar storms, the geomagnetic storm piece of that, can affect the operation of their systems and induce extra currents and loads on those systems that can either trip those systems offline or in the worst of cases, cause damage. That relationship goes back for several decades. In fact, a big incident in 1989 where part of Quebec was tripped offline that affected something like 6 million customers for about 9 hours. I think that really raised the awareness in the power industries.
When we get the alert, we watch the grid and start looking for issues. Are we seeing a decline in voltage? Are we seeing equipment failures? And we readjust the system to try to mitigate those problems, try to keep the lights on and keep it from going out.
We're averaging about 500, 550 kilometers per second.
If we didn't have this early warning, we wouldn't see it until our sensor saw it. Getting more information quicker and faster before the storm hits, not during the storm, is a big improvement.
In the long term, I think what we need and what we're moving toward, the U.S. as a whole, is better modeling, fully understanding this phenomenon, understanding how it would impact specific systems.
Rather than actually experiencing a storm, we can simulate storms in our software and see what the impact is. We try to get ahead of it. We always plan that if there's an outage, how can we keep the lights on? What's the best process to prevent it?
In the end, 5-10 years from now, there's going to be a whole mix of operational procedures driven by what we do on prediction and warning. And then there also will probably be some level of hardware controls to ensure the reliability of the grid.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
There's different types of impacts on communication systems, and the HF we call the high frequency, which is that band of communications 3 to 30 megahertz. But it's a very important band of radio communication because it's used widespread. It's used, for example, by the airlines.
HF radio is most commonly used for position reporting when you're going across the ocean airspace, which is devoid of radar. And ATC can't see you, so it's up to you to report your position and your altitude and your speed.
HF works great most of the time, except during a big flare. And during a big flare, that HF communication capability could be gone within a minute or two. So as soon as we see something happening in there, or we see a flare, it's one of the first things we do is alert the aviation community, hey, big flare, HF's going to be impacted.
Once we know that there's an event going on, then the aviation industry and the airlines can react to that. They can alter their routes over the poles. They can lower the altitudes that they're flying at, or maybe decide not to fly at all in the interest of the passenger safety.
So that's just one example of how HF is used, but the emergency response community will use it a lot too. It's one of their primary backups.
When you've lost connectivity between certain government agencies, it gives you that long-range coverage to talk from out-of-state to federal governments or from the FEMA locations to the state emergency operations centers.
So if you've got a big hurricane impact in the coastline, whatever big city, we've got the cell towers down and whatnot, we've got emergency communication folks in there. Those folks are very familiar with space weather and how it impacts their systems.
Here in recent years, it was used during Katrina when we had a lot of communications outages down there. It was also used during Hurricane Ike. There was an outage of the telephone circuits with the Texas State Emergency Office, so it was used in both of those situations.
So when we talk about backup, especially for the airlines, typically they'll have SATCOM, so it'll be satellite communication.
The satellite technology that emergency responders use could be GPSs, could be satellite phones, satellite data terminals.
Space weather events can impact SATCOMs. The impact can range from a nuisance to loss of a spacecraft. So we will give them the heads up. If we have space weather events, flares, whatnot, they need to know what's impacting their systems. Situational awareness is key. Time is of essence to these folks. Again, it's life and death.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, Joel Curtis back with your marine forecast. Looking at the ice edge, the pattern change has really kicked in with a lot of southerly winds, and it's pushing the ice edge toward the north, all the way from Bristol Bay up to the north of the Pribilofs. And then the Cook Inlet ice is actually melting right now, again with all that surge of warm air. Marine forecast for southeast on Thursday. On the outside waters, 10 to 20 knots, generally westerlies or even northwesterlies, and seas up to about 12 feet or so. On the inside waters, generally northerly directions, 15 knots and seas 3 feet. Then on Friday, we get a wind shift on the inside, 10 to 15 knots on the inside, up to 3 feet seas. And then we start to see some southerlies kicking in on the outside for 10 all the way up to 25 knots when you get near Cape Suckling, and seas about 10 feet. For the south central waters, again, kind of a mixed bag of wind directions, 10 all the way up to 30 knots. Prince William Sound, east wind 15 knots, seas 2 feet. And for Cook Inlet, northeasterlies, 15, and then all the way up to gale force 35 knots with the seas 12 feet down near Kennedy Entrance. Then on Friday's marine forecast, you can see easterlies starting to kick back in, 15 to 25 knots on the outside with seas up to 11 feet. Easterlies 15 knots in Prince William Sound, seas 3 feet. And then for Cook Inlet, northeast wind ranging 20 to 30 knots and seas 11 feet at the southwest end. For Thursday's marine forecast, Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, easterlies, generally 30 to 25 knots on the Pacific side, seas up to 17 feet, and on the Bering Sea side, 15 to 25 knots, seas up to 11 feet. Then on Friday, we've got southerlies starting to kick in, 20 knots in Chillicothe Strait, but all the way up to south 35 knots and seas 18 feet south of Sand Point. On the Bering Sea side, 25 to 30 knots and seas up to 9 feet. For the Aleutian chain, generally easterly circulation around the low south of the peninsula and the Aleutians. Wind ranging from 20 to 30 knots, seas up to 18 feet and 19 feet on the Pacific side. Then for Friday's marine forecast, we get a real wind shift as the low moves up into the Bering Sea. Generally westerlies, 30 knots on the Bering Sea side and 30 to 35 knots on the Pacific side. And seas up to 24 feet on the Pacific and up to 12 feet in the Bering Sea side. For the West Coast, southerlies are the main story here. 20 ranging all the way up to 40 knots. Generally the strongest winds over ice. Seas 13 feet near St. Matthew and 15 feet near the Pribilofs. And then, as we get into Friday, still some southerlies, but now you can see a complex circulation around the low. Wind ranging 20 to 25 knots, seas 16 feet down by the Pribilofs. And for the Arctic coast, easterlies along the North Slope, 25 knots. As you get down to Wainwright, all the way down to Point Hope, east to northeast, 30 knots. Out of Kotzebue Sound, easterlies 35 knots, and southerlies in the Bering Strait, 35 knots. And then on Friday, easterlies 20 to 30 knots along the North Slope, 15 to 20 knots along the Chukchi Sea, generally southerly and southeast, and then down by the Bering Strait, 20 knots. So tonight's weather, we've got that old system, has moved up into the northern Bering Sea and is really fading fast, still causing some snow and blowing snow, and is prompting those warnings that we see in the along the west coast. Then as we get into Thursday, that system has weakened quite a bit. You can see the warm air that's come up, indicated by a warm front, and another system developing 980 millibars south of the Aleutians. And then for Friday, the system really develops. We've got 988 millibars in the Bering Sea, some wind, some surge of warm air, and...
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.